the Road to Tokyo series. We sit down with Xendurance pro athletes to talk shop on their road to the Olympics, what they do outside of training, and more.
Hey everyone, welcome to Team X&D's podcast. I'm Jason St. Clair, and today I have the pleasure of interviewing Marc Scott, a middle distance runner who actually represents Great Britain. Hey Marc, how are you? Thanks for joining me. How are you?
Yep, doing well. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of the podcast. Doing well, just out here in Colorado, altitude training at the minute. So
from Colorado. All right, so let's get in your story because you have a pretty cool story. You're from overseas, UK area, and you came to school in the US, and now you're a professional long distance runner. Tell us where it all began for you.
Yeah, all began in school for me, aged 11. Had the opportunity to do a couple of races for school. There was a little test event, if you want to call it that. Run a couple of laps of the field, and if you were in the top few, then you got selected to go and run for the school. So I did a couple of little small low-key events like that, and then once I was 11, I could then join a running club, and that's how it all started. I joined a running club. Typically, they meet twice a week. That's just standard for the club system in England. So I was just training twice a week with that club. There was maybe 25 junior kids, and then it obviously goes on to the senior rankings as well. So I was training with those, doing extra bits on my own. Mum and Dad would drive beside me in the car when I train around the local area, and then they'd also come out on the bike with me too. So that's how it began.
Got it. Now, track and field is huge over there, and it's kind of like our football over here. Did you ever grow up going to watching those Diamond League events and stuff like that?
I did, yeah, but not until I really got into it. It's just like you say, it's so well supported. It was often very hard to get tickets to go to these events.
Really?
And being from the north of England, it's quite a lot of travel down to the south if you want to go and watch a Diamond League, for example, in London. So I would typically, rather than go and watch, I'd just go and compete. Obviously not at Diamond Leagues at that age, but when I was growing up, I'd be looking to compete most weekends, up and down the country with parents, family all chucked into the car, and then we go off and do this race and then head home. Like that was just typically what we did on a weekend, was find races and we'd go and do it.
That's all. Now, did you have someone that inspired you or motivated you to be a runner? Because you also played soccer too when you're younger, right?
Yeah, I did play soccer. Yeah, I played at a fairly high level, and then I got one injury, and then I was running at the same time when I got this injury, and then I just had to choose which career I wanted to take. Dare say I chose the right one, looking back today.
Yeah.
So I didn't really have any motivation. No, not specifically any individual. I was just always pretty driven as a kid and wanted to be successful at anything I did, whether it was playing soccer or in school or obviously running. So there was just more intrinsic than anything, the motivation.
Absolutely. So for those of you listening, over in England, they don't necessarily have like track going through, the school systems, but they had clubs, so he'd run on the weekends. But let's talk about how you went from overseas to the States to go to college. Now you went to Tulsa, is that correct?
That is correct, yep.
So talk about the process of how that works. It's for people listening, it probably seems unusual.
Yeah. Assuming most of the listeners will be American based. So yeah. There's a lot of companies out there who do recruiting, and you can sign up to a recruiting service and they will put you in touch with certain schools who they have connections with, who or where they think you might fit best if you prioritize your academics, or it depends how talented you are and what times you've run as a junior. But the way I went about things, I knew of some British guys went to a specific university, which was the University of Tulsa, which is where I ended up. I reached out to those guys first, and then they put me in touch with a coach, and he has a very good relationship with the international students, just with the history they have, and which they continue to have. He was very, very welcoming. He's had a lot of success with those international kids, and that's just the way he goes now because of the success he has. There's no reason to recruit the American kids just because they most of them have never heard of the University of Tulsa because it's such a small private school.
Yep.
They do have a lot of success in the international kids. So he set out a few targets for me to try and hit during the summer before I was due to go out, which I hit them. It wasn't easy, but I did end up hitting them. He offered me a scholarship, and I spoke to the guys, fellow Xendurance guy, actually, Chris O'Hare, who was at Tulsa, won a national title there.
Yeah.
And he talked very highly of the program, the coaching staff, the facilities. And yeah, I got offered a scholarship and couldn't turn it down. So off I went, and I was there for 5 years, in Oklahoma. So
And have you have you ever been to the United States prior to that?
yeah, I just went on vacation to Florida, the Disney Universal like Orlando Studios, all that.
Yeah.
Yep, that's typically, if people go over, that's where they'll go to. They're California usually, so definitely not
Disney
Tulsa
World.
anyway.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I went
Know
there
it
in
all.
2008 with family. And then the next time I went to the States, my second time, was for university. So
Now, was there a cultural shock coming, from over there to here, whether it was, people or education or
right.
competition? Was there a shock there for you?
It was a culture shock at first, yeah, but soon got used to it. But yeah, originally just the scale of things was crazy. The highways, the big trucks, the fast food restaurants, just it's things like that you don't really think about. You just think, oh, there'll just be a McDonald's, but it's 4 or 5 times the size of the ones in England. Um,
Really?
yeah, just everything is on a total different scale. And like you say, like the university itself, just the infrastructure and the money they put into college sports is second to none.
Yeah.
There's no options like that. You wouldn't. I didn't even get offered a scholarship to any universities in England. So
Wow.
that just kind of shows the extent from one to another. It's just an opportunity I couldn't refuse.
Absolutely.
And I probably wouldn't be in the position I am today if I decided to stay in England and get my degree from there.
Absolutely. And
Um,
what is for the degree standpoint, what did it look like from education from there to here? Was that a shock for you too, or is it
um,
easier?
I think,
Or,
yeah, I guess it's called like AP classes in the US, but the equivalent of AP classes in England were very, very difficult. There's a good education system set up in England, and that did set me up very well for university. I dare say it was more difficult. The last few years of high school was more difficult than pursuing my degree at Tulsa, and that's not knocking
awesome.
Tulsa because it's
Yeah,
a very good private independent school. But it's just that the education system in England does a pretty good job.
absolutely. And from the running standpoint, I'm assuming the competition over here was super helpful to get you to where you're at today.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, because you're 18 years old when you go over there, and you're racing anywhere upwards to from 18 to 25 years old. Whereas typically you'd race the kids of the same age in England. So yeah, and again, like myself, there's a lot of international kids go out there from Kenya, from England, from Australia. They go from all over Europe, and that just again drives up the competition levels. Um,
Yeah,
Again, the Americans very good standard of sports because of the way they are brought up in high school.
Absolutely. And what
So
events did you run in college?
yeah, focused on the distance events primarily. Would occasionally help the DMR or run a 1500 outdoors, but for the indoor season, we'd focus on the 3K, 5K, and then obviously outdoors, we'd go on to the 5K and 10K, and that's where I ended up winning the national title in 2017. Was on the 10K in Eugene. So
Oh, amazing. So you finished up college 2017, won a title. How has the transition been from college to being a professional now?
yeah, it's been pretty smooth. There was a few little bumps along the way, just when you get thrown into an environment with Olympic and world medalists on your team. It's a little different. Versus when you're the one of the best guys on your college team, you kind of dictate the pace you want to run, and everything's determined around you. But not anymore when you're thrown in with these medalists on the team. But the college I was at, Tulsa, did a really good job of setting me up to go to the professional level. Did a lot of hard, intense running, a lot of strength work, as we call it, which is what the Bowerman Track Club are really driven by. They do a lot of stuff like that, and I already had experiences of that because of where I was in college and just the way my coach and assistant coach like to do things. So they really helped me along the way, and then there's just a lot of guys to run with here. It just makes
Yeah,
things a lot easier. You're not just the same guys every day, so it's
absolutely.
nice.
For those of you that are listening and are just jumping in, he mentioned Bowerman Club. So, he went from Tulsa College into his professional career. And when you're part of the Bowerman Club, which is a family of Nike, so
Right.
that's essentially his sponsor, but also his team, and that's what they call them. So,
Yeah.
how special is that to you to be part of the Bowerman Club?
Yeah, it's an honor, honestly, to be a part of it. Just surrounded by a bunch of medalists, all very, very humble. You wouldn't know these guys, what they've done in the past, with their credentials, but it was the one place. If I was going to stay in the States after college, it was the one place where I wanted to be. And once I got the phone call from Jerry, the coach here at Bowerman, I knew things were pretty good, and he was interested, and I couldn't say no for sure. It's
Yeah,
it's it's obviously hard being away from home all the time and being in the States, but 7 years, going on to my eighth year now, out of over in the States. Things are going great, and I'm really glad to be a part of the Bowerman Track Club.
absolutely. And so you run the 5K, and
Yeah,
possibly may get into the 10K. So what does that training or what does mileage look like for you on a typical week?
yeah. The mileage. I don't do a lot of mileage just because I want to keep healthy. I'd say I don't do a lot. It's probably sounds a lot to a lot of the listeners.
Yeah,
It
give me a
varies.
number because I know it's a lot.
Yeah, let's say it's around 90, 95 miles a week. Um, with easy runs, 4 days a week, and then two sessions in the week, Tuesday, Friday, and then a long run on a Sunday, and the other 4 days are easy runs. We say they're easy; they're not very easy, but yeah, that's
But
just
just
that's just what happens
just
when you have 12 guys running together on a morning. So
well, just so you know, there's a lot of people that don't even drive 95 miles in a week.
right,
So
that's it.
that's a
That's
lot
it.
of miles.
It's the often comparison people make is probably these professional runners. They probably drive more miles than people. They run more miles, sorry, than people drive a week. So
Yeah. And
yeah,
then you said
it adds
Sunday
up.
is the long run.
Mm.
What does that mileage look like?
Yeah, we a lot of our stuff is based off of minutes. So we'll target 1 hour 45, up to 2 hours. Marathon guys may run 2.5 hours. So at a minimum, you're looking at 16 miles, and it could range from 16, depending on what time you're going. But standard run 1 hour 45, 16, anywhere to 18 miles probably on a Sunday morning.
So you're you're running almost more than a half marathon, but almost a marathon every week, which is
Yeah,
so impressive.
exactly. Yeah. It's
That's
just
amazing.
ingrained. It's part of the weekly cycle. What every professional runner does. So
Sure. So what does recovery look like for you? Because I know it's so important. You're putting so many miles in. Well, to me, that's a lot of miles. But you're also doing a lot of training as well.
right.
So how can you how do you help yourself recover from all this?
Yeah. Typically, is just a baseline is leave 5 or 6 hours in between sessions. So I'll run on the morning. Ran this morning. I'll wait till 5 or 6 p.m. before I run again tonight. Um, so that's one thing. Eat, hydrate, and take a nap during the day. They all help to recover, and then doing the little things, the normal tech, the stretching, the rolling out.
Yeah.
They all help, and then taking some great products like Xendurance, obviously protein, the dailies they have, the endurance and
The
just
extreme endurance.
extreme endurance, the joint care, just everything like that. It all makes a difference. The protein, even staying hydrated, for example, with the hydro sticks, is just it's something so small, but it goes such a
Yeah.
long way.
Yeah. Now, did you ever do a baseline test with the extreme endurance product?
I did not actually, no.
Did, do you feel a difference in your running while being on that?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, I can't say I feel a difference from before and after starting taking the products, obviously with that baseline test not being done. But
Right.
since I've started taking the products, the benefits have been great. Just feeling good on the morning. Even it's the little things like taking the dailies and just not getting sick, for example. It's small things like that which do go a long way in your training. You don't want to miss a couple of days with being ill, and that's where X
Yeah.
Endurance really does come in handy. Just making sure protein after sessions just gets you ready for the evening or the session the next day. So
Absolutely. Now, we as a company believe in whole food eating lifestyle, and supplementation exists for reasons, just for all the reasons that you said, but also because we miss certain nutrients in our diet because of the way we mass produce foods. What is a typical, or what's your diet or lifestyle of eating look like?
yeah, specifically don't have a set diet I follow. It's not like I eat a certain food every day or try and get this or that in. Just on the whole, eat healthy, a lot of fruit and vegetables, ensuring enough carbohydrate and protein in the diet. But yeah, I don't follow a specific diet. Don't have a nutritionist. But I just each individual knows what you feel best with eating and drinking. So
Yeah.
just ensuring I get in what's right for me, maybe different from someone else, but I don't particularly go out and eat fast food. In season I don't do that. Don't drink alcohol, and it's things like that which can wait till the end of season. So I don't. Yeah, it's just having the motivation levels to and being able to say no to things like that, which
Yeah.
really do. It's hard at times when you're craving ice cream or you're craving dessert, but you can
Yeah.
you can get over that, and you can
It
you can eat as much as you want in the off season.
When you give in, what are those types of things that you give into? Is it ice cream or
Ice cream is a big one, yeah.
is it? What's your
Ice cream and
favorite?
chocolate. Yeah. Anything with cookie dough is my go-to.
Nice. It's a good
So
choice.
yeah,
Awesome.
yeah.
Now, how about the mental aspect of it? So you're putting in a lot of miles, you're doing a lot to your body. You obviously got to eat and sleep and rest, but what about helping your mental capacity? Is there anything that you do to help yourself with that?
Um, it's never something I've actually focused on. Specifically for me, I don't look into that stuff too much. I just know if I know I've put in the work, I know I can race well, and that's the one thing I look back and I can look at the sessions and the splits, the times I've run, and I know that will pay off at some point.
Yeah, love it.
Um,
Love that answer.
so
The
I
hay's in
don't,
the
yeah,
barn, right?
exactly. I don't look into it too much mentally. I know some people like to, and it reassures them, but yeah, I've never been that way, and I don't think I ever will be.
Yeah, I always love the saying. I think it's something like, you shouldn't fear if you're prepared, right? If you put in the work,
Exactly.
you're going to be ready.
Yep. Yep. That's the way it goes, and I'm a big believer of that.
Absolutely. So are we going to see you in the indoor season?
Yeah, I'm actually opening up my indoor season at UW, Washington, on the 1st of February. So that's going to
Awesome.
be
And
my
what event
first
will you be
meet.
running?
I'm going to do the 3K.
3K.
Going to do the 3K, and then we'll reevaluate after that. That'll be after 4 weeks of altitude training. So I'll drop straight in, race there, and then head straight back to Colorado after the race, and then get another good couple of weeks of training put away, and then we'll look to race another couple of times for the indoor season.
Absolutely. So going into 2020, obviously very important year. So it only happens every 4 years. Is there any difference in your training from last year versus this year that you're doing differently to be able
Um,
to get prepped?
I don't think a lot of people look at the World Championships too much differently from the Olympics. The World Championships is still a huge major games. So I'm not specifically doing anything different. Maybe the little thing, just taking care of the body, stretching, foam rolling a little more than I normally would. But I think the main difference is the workouts and sessions will be set from our coaches. I think they have the biggest influence, and they can. Jerry, our coach, he's been around for so long. He knows how to get athletes ready for those major championships.
Yeah,
So I'm sure he's
absolutely.
got it all figured out for every single one of us. Whether it's method or madness, that's for you to decide. But he always has us ready, even if it's a little different from how a lot of other coaches go about doing it.
Absolutely. So you also mentioned altitude training. For those that are listening, can you explain why long distance runners do altitude training?
Yeah, obviously there's a lot less oxygen up at these higher altitudes. So with that being said, every run, even if you go walking up the stairs, it's harder because your muscles are not getting the oxygen quick enough because there isn't the capacity there. So these hard runs, the hard workouts, they stimulate the red blood cell production, and red blood cells carry oxygen to the working muscles. So
Mm,
when you drop down out of altitude, you have an abundance of red blood cells, so that can deliver oxygen to the muscles a lot quicker. So then hopefully you will go and race faster.
got it.
That's the basic science behind it. It's all to do with the red blood cells and the oxygen capacity, the muscles, which can be delivered to the muscles. So
And what is the
everyone does
duration
it.
that
I
you're?
think
Yeah,
yeah, everyone does it. The science behind it. I think the minimum you should be at altitude is probably 21 days to gain, as so they call it, the boost.
mm,
So 21 days, and then I don't know when you will be at capacity, when you've maximized the potential. Obviously, some people are at altitude locations all year round just because of that's where their training base is. But um, I think anyway from 35 days onwards, 5 weeks onwards, you're probably at your max.
sure.
So we're going to be up here for 4 weeks. We'll drop out, race, come up for another couple of weeks, and then we'll be out. And then that will hopefully elevate your training for the next period at sea level.
Awesome, awesome. So you talked about also you're part of Bowerman team. For people that are listening, that's a part of the Nike family. And
Right,
wanted to ask you really quick, how important is technical equipment for you? Obviously, technical equipment meaning your footwear.
right.
That's what you make your living in. So
Yeah.
what type of shoe do you wear for the distance that you run?
Yeah, so I'm just in a new spike at the minute. I was wearing the Mambas, the Mamba fives they're called. But now with, like you say, the technology coming out, the foam, the springs, whatever you want to call them, the carbon fiber shanks, the plates, um, I'm wearing a new spike called the Juice Box. That's the athlete. That's the
Nice.
athlete word for it. No, whatever you want to say, but it's a new spike with carbon fiber plate in it. There's the 4% next percent foam incorporated into that, which you've probably seen a lot of controversy at the minute with the next percent
Yeah.
shoes, which all the marathon guys have been wearing. So it's got that foam in it, and it's got an air bubble in there as well, just for a little extra propulsion, basically. I'm going to be debuting those at the meet indoors. I've done a few little tryouts, and they feel pretty good. So let's hope that
Yeah, it's
technology
awesome.
can bring me to a PB as well as the hard
Yeah,
training I've been putting in.
love Nike. Now, do you wear the marathon shoe when you're training? Probably on
Exactly.
road?
Yeah, we all have access to them, and I've wore them. There is a version which a lot of people don't have called the Alpha Fly. Which is what Kipchoge wore for the Breaking 2.
Mhm.
But a lot of people don't have access to those. But the next percent, which you'll know, the luminous green and fluorescent pink ones. A lot of people do train in those, and I've raced in them as well. So yeah, we do have good access to that stuff. We've been part of the Nike family, like you say, and it also helps. It doesn't just make you, if you want to say, run faster, but it also protects your legs because of the foam and the technology now. You're not just beating your legs up day after day after day, wearing minimal shoes which don't protect the lower legs. So a
Right,
lot of people
right.
say you can run faster in them, and you also feel a lot fresher afterwards from doing it. So it's good. Glad
Absolutely.
to be part of the Nike family.
Yeah.
And
So
the
for
shoes.
those of you listening, we're talking about this marathon shoe, and you mentioned there's some controversy around that, and I could be completely wrong, but I've read a couple articles where I think some other athletes may feel like they are at a disadvantage because
Right.
Nike's come up with a shoe, and they kind of feel like I, I wouldn't call it cheating. I just feel like Nike's just been more advanced in their technology, right? It's like
Right.
Apple iPhone has better
Exactly.
technology that and so what's your thoughts or opinion on that?
Yeah. I mean, I think at one point, I think athletes may have been disadvantaged simply because their respective brand, who they're sponsored by, are just further behind in technological advancements. So, but it's not like they don't have access to certain footwear. Every once a new shoe comes out from a certain company, then everyone tries to replicate it, especially with the hype what these next percent shoes were getting. I know Adidas have got something similar out now. I saw some being released. A few of the guys were wearing them at the weekend at Houston marathon, half marathon. Hoka, they've got something similar, big stack height, carbon fiber plate in theirs too.
Yeah.
So I think it's like tennis players these days. They don't play with wooden rackets anymore. It's just because the
Yeah.
technology is so far advanced now. Um,
Yeah.
you can choose to play with a wooden racket if you want, but you're going to be disadvantaged, and that's just the name of the game now. Um,
Right.
so at times you might be out of luck with who you're sponsored by, but if they're going to come out with a shoe which is just the same.
Right. And
So
I think that goes for many industries. Like even for talking supplements, like there's probably supplements out there that have been there since the late 90s that still have the same ingredients where, you know, supplements are like technology. You got to continually research ingredients that are useful for our body and replenishing what we're losing in our diets, right?
yeah,
So I
exactly, yeah.
absolutely agree with that. Yeah. So we might have to go back to the beginning for a little bit, just so you know. This could be edited out, but
Okay.
I don't know if it recorded the first few minutes. I don't know why.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
So hold on one second. Let me just check this.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's the internet didn't catch or what.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't get that first part of it. Let me just check on it. Really sorry about that. I don't know
You're all
what
good.
happened. Okay. Yeah, I didn't get that, unfortunately.
Yeah, don't worry, we can. Anything you need to
Okay.
do. Can you listen to see where it started recording, or?
It's loading right now. It might show up after I hit stop, but it doesn't look like it. That's the first time I've ever seen that. That's weird.
Yeah, no, we'll do it just to cover our.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we'll just continue off the shoe and then we'll start over. So, absolutely looking forward to seeing the debut of that shoe in the indoor.
Yeah,
And
I mean, some
how
people have already raced with it. It's not. It's not just. It's the first time I'm going to race in it, just because.
I met you. Yeah, you're
Yeah,
our athlete.
exactly.
We're excited to see you run. So,
Yeah.
how long is the indoor season?
Um, there is a World Championships in March. Not quite sure if I'm going to target that yet. But usually it'll just last about 6 weeks, and then it's usually done.
Now, and when does the outdoor season start?
Depends how early you want to open up.
Oh,
Just
really?
with it, just usually people will probably count back from the Olympics, and then see which meets fit, where you want to go to altitude again. But I think Peyton Jordan is usually the one people target to open up at. I think that's early May. Early May is probably when I look to start for the outdoor
Got
season,
it.
and that might be with a 10K or it might be with a 5. So
And then specifically for your training, obviously you're here for indoors, but then outdoors, from my knowledge, a lot of it is back, overseas in the UK. Will you go back there and stay over there for a while, or we continue to
yeah,
come back here?
it simply just depends how competitions how they line up. The British Championships it's a separate event for the 10K and the 5K. So the 10K is the 10K is the 10K is a lot earlier than the 5K trials. The 5K trials are match up the same as the US this year, which is nice. Whereas last year for the World trials, they didn't match up, so I had to come over to the UK because I didn't have enough time to get in an altitude stint so I could get the boost.
Right.
So I had to go home, and I was training with a group down in London for 4 or 5 weeks um, before my championships, just because I didn't have enough time to get in an altitude stint, and then the travel is pretty tiring on the body when you're going over to the UK just because of the time change.
Yeah.
They're
So
at eight
I was
hours.
gonna I was gonna ask you that next. So you guys travel so much during the season.
Yeah,
I mean, especially Americans going. I feel like the bigger events from the outdoor season are obviously overseas, and
yeah.
they're on 10-hour flights one way. So, what does that look like for a flight? Like, are you able to get some leg room, first class? How does that work?
Yeah, I mean, it just depends on how many air miles you've got, basically. But typically, I think most people just they'll travel economy, but they'll just make sure they have enough time once they arrive before the meet begins, if that allows for training. I know obviously some people race on weekends, then go midweek, and then back to back for the next weekend. But I think there's a lot of facilities and places to train in Europe where people can go to. So they'll just use that as a hub rather than travel back and forth. It's just a lot easier to stay on the same time zone. Um,
Absolutely,
and if you
totally
have
makes
the
sense.
facilities you need, then there's a lot of places. A lot of people do it, like for the Diamond League circuit. They'll
Mhm.
go over for the first, the second, the third meet, and then stay over until that circuit's finished.
Got it. That makes
And
total
usually it's
sense.
always there's there's one in the US, so people, and it's usually pretty early. Is the pre-classic in Eugene, so people usually do that one. They'll go to Europe and then they'll continue racing over there.
Now they're having the Prefontaine this year at the first new stadium. Is that right?
That is correct.
Or
Yeah.
so for those listeners, Nike is building or has invested to make the stadium and this next, or actually the first race is going to be Prefontaine, correct?
Yes, I think so. Yep.
Yeah, which is a legendary stadium, and I mean, just from the mock-ups, the pictures I've seen, it looks like it's going to be
Mhm.
amazing. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, they've put a lot of money into it, so they're aspiring to be one of the best track facilities in the world. So,
Oh, I
and
bet.
what a great place to have it in Eugene with all the history, like you mentioned.
And backed by a huge, great company, right?
Exactly. Yep. I've got no doubt that they're going to fill the stadium with usually every meet they host there. So
Oh, I bet.
Tracktown USA, Eugene. So they've got no excuses.
Yep, absolutely. Well, hey, Marc, thanks for joining me. We wish you luck in the indoor season, definitely the outdoor season, especially going into 2020, representing your country. And thank you from the Xendurance family for being a part of us and supporting us. We
Yeah.
truly can't wait for your success this year.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Great. It's great to be a part of the podcast here. So, and
absolutely.
maybe wouldn't be where I am today without the support of X Endurance too. So, greatly appreciated.
Absolutely.